The Seal Starer Nexus station hung in the void like a jewel carved from the heart of a dying star. Its surface shimmered with 1,000 hues, reflecting the swirling nebula that surrounded it like a cosmic ocean. The station was enormous, a sprawling construct of silver and crystalline towers that seemed to defy gravity, floating effortlessly in the vastness of space. Energy conduits pulsed faintly along its exterior, casting a soft, ethereal glow that gave the structure an almost otherworldly presence. It was a place of power, where decisions that shaped the galaxy were made, and now, for the first time, it would host a species that had only just begun to scratch the surface of interstellar travel humanity. Inside the station's grand assembly hall, a space so vast it could house entire cities, the galaxy's most influential leaders had gathered. The air was heavy with tension, a quiet hum of anticipation as the 5 billion representatives, each a symbol of their species, might stood in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from disdain to mild curiosity. Above them, the dome of the hall was transparent, revealing the swirling nebula outside, as if the stars themselves were watching what was about to unfold. Admiral Zurich of the Virith Dominion stood tall and imposing, his dark blue scales catching the light like polished obsidian. His eyes, narrow and calculating, scanned the room as he spoke with a voice that carried the weight of centuries of military conquest. "Humans," he sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. "Their technology is barely advanced enough to leave their own star system. This is a mockery of the convergence." Beside him, Warlord Kaelra of the Drakthar Syndicate let out a low, guttural growl. Her armor, a jagged assembly of blackened metal, seemed to radiate menace, and her crimson eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "This is a waste of time," she said, her voice harsh and guttural, like the grinding of stone. "They have nothing to offer us. Their species is fragile, their weapons primitive. Why are they even here?" Strategist Threx of the Nexar Swarm clicked his mandibles in amusement, his segmented body shifting slightly as he leaned forward. His multifaceted eyes glimmered with a faint green light, and his voice emerged as a strange, buzzing cadence. "Perhaps they are here to amuse us," he said, his tone laced with mockery. "I hear their kind enjoys theatrics. Maybe they've come to perform for us." General Corvith of the Obsidian Union crossed his massive, armored arms over his chest, his expression one of cold indifference. His skin, a dark, metallic sheen, reflected the light like burnished steel, and his voice was deep and resonant. "Their ships are likely made of scrap metal," he said flatly, as if stating an undeniable fact. "It would take them centuries to match even our weakest vessels." Only High Seer Althera of the Luminar Ascendancy remained silent for a moment, her luminous, translucent form shimmering softly as if she were made of living starlight. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and melodic, carrying an air of wisdom that silenced the others. "Let us not judge too quickly," she said, her glowing eyes fixed on the ornate doors at the far end of the hall. "Even the smallest light can cast a long shadow." As if on cue, the great doors began to open with a deep, resonant hum, the sound echoing through the vast chamber. All eyes turned toward the entrance, where a lone figure stepped forward. Commander Elias Carter of Earth entered the hall with measured steps, his posture straight, his expression calm. He wore a simple, unadorned uniform of dark gray, a stark contrast to the elaborate and imposing attire of the alien leaders. There were no medals, no insignias of rank or power, just the quiet dignity of a man who carried the weight of his species on his shoulders. The room seemed to hold its breath as Elias stopped at the center of the hall, his gaze sweeping across the gathered leaders. He did not flinch under their scrutiny, nor did he respond to the faint murmurs of disdain that rippled through the crowd. Instead, he inclined his head respectfully, his voice steady and clear as he spoke. "Admirals, warlords, strategists, generals, seers," he said, addressing each leader with deliberate formality. "Thank you for allowing humanity the honor of attending this summit." There was a moment of silence, heavy and palpable, before Admiral Zirik let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "Honor?" he repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You speak of honor as if you understand what it means. Tell me, human, what does your species hope to gain from this gathering? Do you truly believe you belong here?" Elias met Zirik's gaze without hesitation, his expression unchanging. "We are here because we believe in the strength of unity," he said simply. "And because we know that even the smallest voice can contribute to a greater harmony." Warlord Kaelra snarled, baring her sharp, jagged teeth. "Unity," she spat. "Your kind knows nothing of unity. You are a fractured, chaotic species, barely capable of governing yourselves. What could you possibly offer us?" Elias did not rise to her provocation. Instead, he turned his attention to High Seer Althera, the only one who had not spoken against him. "Seer Althera," he said, his tone respectful, "you spoke of shadows and light. Humanity has spent much of its history in the shadows, struggling to find its place in the universe. But it is in the darkest moments that light shines brightest." Althera tilted her head slightly, her glowing eyes studying him with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of his being. "And do you believe your light is bright enough to be seen among the stars?" she asked softly. Elias's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "That," he said, "is for you to decide." The room fell silent once more, the alien leaders exchanging glances, their expressions unreadable. There was something in Elias's words, in his quiet confidence, that unsettled them. He was not what they had expected. Humanity was not what they had expected. And as the swirling nebula outside cast its shifting colors across the chamber, it seemed as though the stars themselves were waiting to see what this unexpected newcomer would bring to the galaxy. The summit began in a chamber that seemed too vast to be contained within any structure built by mortal hands. The air shimmered faintly, charged with energy from the gathered leaders and the weight of their intentions. Above, the transparent dome revealed the swirling nebula beyond, its colors shifting like a living canvas of light and shadow. The hall was silent, save for the faint hum of alien technology embedded into the walls, a constant reminder of the power and sophistication on display. One by one, the alien factions stepped forward to present their flagship warships, each a testament to their species' dominance and ingenuity. The atmosphere grew heavier with each unveiling, as if the very air itself bowed under the weight of their might. Admiral Zirik was the first to step forward. His scaled armor gleamed under the lights, and his piercing eyes swept across the room with an air of superiority. He raised a clawed hand, and with a single gesture, the room dimmed. A holographic image of the Phantom Wraith materialized before the assembly. The ship was a dark, angular shadow, its edges blurred as if it were already fading into nothingness. Its surface seemed to drink in the light, leaving it veiled in an unnatural darkness. "The Phantom Wraith," Zirik announced, his voice sharp and commanding, "is the pinnacle of stealth technology. It cannot be detected by any known sensors. It moves unseen, unheard, striking from the void like a phantom. Entire fleets have been destroyed without ever knowing what hit them." The audience murmured in awe, their voices a mix of admiration and unease. The ship's presence, even as an image, seemed to exude menace, as though it were watching them from the shadows. Next came Warlord Kaelra, her armored form radiating raw, unrestrained power. She strode forward with a predator's confidence, her sharp teeth glinting as she sneered at the assembly. With a wave of her clawed hand, the image of the Inferno Titan appeared. The dreadnought was colossal, its jagged, blackened hull bristling with weapons that seemed almost alive, glowing faintly with a molten red light. The ship's sheer size dwarfed anything else in the room, and its presence seemed to suck the air from the chamber. "The Inferno Titan," Kael'ra growled, her voice a low rumble, "is destruction incarnate. Its primary weapon can shatter the crust of a planet, reducing entire civilizations to ash. It is not a ship, it is a god of war." The audience sat in stunned silence, the weight of her words hanging over them like a storm cloud. Kael'ra's grin widened, her satisfaction evident as she basked in their fear. Strategist Thrax moved forward next, his segmented body clicking softly with each step. His multifaceted eyes glimmered with a strange, alien intelligence as he raised his spindly arms. The holographic image that appeared was not of a single ship but a swarm, a vast, shifting cloud of metallic drones that moved as one. "This," Thrax said, his voice a strange, buzzing cadence, "is the Swarm Nexus. A fleet of AI-controlled drones, each one a weapon, each one a mind. They think as one, act as one, adapt as one. There is no formation they cannot break, no tactic they cannot counter. To face the Nexus is to face inevitability." The swarm moved in perfect synchronization, forming shapes and patterns that seemed to mock the very concept of individuality. The audience watched in uneasy fascination, the sheer alienness of the Nexus sending a chill through the room. General Corvith stepped forward with a deliberate, measured pace, his metallic form reflecting the faint light of the chamber. His expression was unreadable, his voice deep and steady as he gestured to the image of the Aegis Bastion. The ship was a fortress in space, its hull a seamless expanse of dark, gleaming metal. It radiated an aura of impenetrability, as though nothing could touch it. "The Aegis Bastion," Corvith said, his tone devoid of emotion, "is the ultimate defense. Its shields are impenetrable, its armor unbreakable. It is not a weapon of destruction but a symbol of endurance. No force in the galaxy can breach its defenses." The audience nodded in silent respect, the Bastion's sheer presence enough to command their admiration. Corvith stood unmoving, his gaze fixed forward, as though daring anyone to challenge his claim. Finally, High Seer Althera stepped forward, her luminous form glowing softly in the dim light. She moved with an almost ethereal grace, her voice calm and melodic as she raised her hands. The image of the ethereal veil appeared, and the room seemed to grow colder. The ship was beautiful and haunting, its design fluid and organic, as though it were a living thing. Its surface shimmered with a soft, iridescent light that seemed to pulse in time with an unseen rhythm. "The ethereal veil," Althera said, her voice carrying an almost hypnotic quality, "is not a weapon in the traditional sense. It is a vessel of the mind, a manipulator of thought and emotion. Its presence alone can disorient and terrify, turning even the bravest warriors into quivering shadows of themselves. It is a reminder that the greatest battles are fought within." The audience shivered, the ship's image stirring something deep within them, a primal fear they could not name. Althera lowered her hands, her glowing eyes scanning the room as she stepped back into place. As the final presentation ended, the room was filled with a heavy silence. The alien leaders stood tall, their pride evident as they basked in the awe and admiration of the audience. Each ship was a masterpiece of destruction, a symbol of its creator's power and ingenuity. Then, as if on cue, all eyes turned to Commander Elias Carter, who stood alone among the gathered leaders. His simple uniform and quiet demeanor seemed almost laughable in the presence of such grandeur. The alien leaders exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from amusement to contempt. Warlord Kael'ra was the first to speak, her voice dripping with mockery. "Well, human," she said, her sharp teeth bared in a predatory grin. "What marvel has your species brought to this gathering? A cargo ship, perhaps? Or a relic from your primitive wars?" The others chuckled, their laughter echoing through the chamber. Even High Seer Althera allowed herself a faint, knowing smile. Elias remained calm, his expression unchanging as he met their gazes. "Our contribution," he said, his voice steady and clear, "will arrive tomorrow. The is dauntless. Some things," he added, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips, "are better seen in person." For a moment, there was silence as the leaders processed his words. Then the laughter returned, louder and more derisive than before. "Arrogance," Admiral Zurich muttered, shaking his head. "Or desperation," Strategist Threx buzzed, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Elias said nothing more, his calm demeanor unshaken as the laughter faded. He simply stood there, a quiet figure amidst the grandeur and power of the galaxy's greatest factions. And yet, there was something in his silence, in the way he carried himself, that hinted at a deeper truth, something the others could not yet see. The swirling nebula outside seemed to shift, its colors darkening as if the stars themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. The following day unfolded with an eerie stillness across the Seal-Starer Nexus station. The anticipation in the Grand Assembly Hall was palpable, a silent tension that coiled tighter with every passing moment. The alien leaders, seated in their respective places of honor, exchanged occasional glances, their expressions ranging from skepticism to faint curiosity. Outside the station's transparent dome, the endless expanse of stars stretched in every direction, their light cold and distant. The swirling nebula that framed the station seemed quieter than usual, as if the universe itself waited for what was about to arrive. Then it began. The station's sensors, flawless and precise, flickered erratically. Alerts rippled through the control systems, their operators scrambling to make sense of the data. Energy signatures spiked wildly, readings fluctuating between impossibility and incomprehensibility. It was as if something vast and unknowable was approaching, something that defied the very laws the galaxy had come to understand. The alien leaders leaned forward in unison, their postures stiff with intrigue. Warlord Kaelra's crimson eyes narrowed, her claws tapping impatiently against the armrest of her throne-like seat. Admiral Zurich's scaled brow furrowed, his sharp gaze fixed on the distant void beyond the dome. Even High Seer Althera, ever composed, tilted her glowing head slightly, her luminous form shimmering faintly in the dim light. And then, it appeared. At first, it was a shadowy faint, angular silhouette against the backdrop of the nebula. But as it drew closer, the shadow grew, expanding until it dominated the view outside the dome. The as dauntless emerged from the void like a leviathan rising from the depths of an endless ocean. Its sheer size was incomprehensible, a dark colossus that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of sight. The station's automated systems struggled to calculate its dimensions, their readings stuttering and failing under the strain. The hull of the Dauntless was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was a seamless expanse of dark, angular surfaces that seemed to drink in the light around it, casting no reflections. The ship exuded an ominous presence, its design cold and alien, as if it had been forged not by human hands but by the void itself. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace, its immense form gliding silently into the system, dwarfing every other vessel in its path. The alien leaders stared in stunned silence. The pride they had displayed the day before, as they unveiled their own warships, now seemed hollow and insignificant. The Dauntless was not merely a ship, it was a statement, a challenge to everything they thought they knew about humanity. Warlord Kaelra was the first to speak, her voice low and uncertain, a stark contrast to her usual bravado. "Is that," she hesitated, her crimson eyes wide with disbelief. "Is that a warship?" Admiral Zurich's scaled jaw tightened, his claws digging into the armrests of his seat. His voice, usually sharp and commanding, was barely a whisper. "No species builds ships this size," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the Dauntless as if it might vanish if he looked away. Strategist Thrax clicked his mandibles nervously, his segmented body shifting in agitation. The swarm nexus, his pride and joy, suddenly felt small and insignificant in comparison. General Corvith's metallic form remained still, but his glowing eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Even High Seer Althera, the most composed among them, seemed momentarily lost for words, her luminous form dimming slightly as she stared at the ship. The Dauntless came to a halt, its immense shadow falling over the station like an eclipse. The silence in the hall was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the station's systems struggling to adjust to the ship's overwhelming presence. The alien leaders turned their eyes to Commander Elias Carter, who stood calmly at the center of the room, his expression unreadable. Elias stepped forward, his movements measured and deliberate. He let the silence linger for a moment longer, allowing the weight of the Dauntless' arrival to settle over the assembly. Then, with a faint smile, he spoke. "The Dauntless," he said, his voice steady and clear, "is a medium-class vessel in Earth's fleet." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, their impact reverberating through the hall. The alien leaders exchanged incredulous glances, their disbelief evident. Medium class? The very idea was absurd. If this was a medium-class vessel, what did humanity consider large? What other secrets did this seemingly primitive species hold? Admiral Zerik's voice broke the silence, his tone sharp and accusatory. "You expect us to believe that?" he demanded, his narrowed eyes fixed on Elias. "No species, no empire possesses the resources or the technology to build ships of this magnitude. Are you mocking us, human?" Elias met Zerik's gaze without flinching, his calm demeanor unshaken. "The Dauntless is but one of many," he said simply. "Its size and power are not meant to intimidate, but to represent the potential of unity and innovation. Humanity has always believed in pushing beyond limits, in reaching for what others deem impossible." Warlord Kaelro let out a low growl, her claws digging into the armrest of her seat. "Unity," she spat, her voice laced with bitterness. "Your kind speaks of unity, yet you arrive with a vessel that casts a shadow over all others. What is this, if not a display of supremacy?" Elias turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "The Dauntless is not here to overshadow, Warlord Kaelra," he said. "It is here to stand beside. Humanity does not seek to conquer or to dominate. We seek to contribute, to share what we have learned, and to learn from others in turn." High Seer Althera's luminous eyes studied Elias intently, her expression unreadable. "And yet," she said softly, her voice carrying an almost musical quality, "your vessel's presence stirs fear, not admiration. Its design is unlike anything we have seen, cold, dark, and unyielding. It feels unnatural." Elias inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her words. "Fear is natural when faced with the unknown," he said. "But fear can also be the beginning of understanding. The Dauntless is not a weapon of war, Seer Althera. It is a symbol of what humanity believes in: resilience, determination, and the courage to face the unknown." The room fell silent once more, the alien leaders processing his words. Outside, the Dauntless loomed, its dark hull absorbing the light of the stars, a silent sentinel in the void. The swirling nebula seemed to shift around it, as if the universe itself was drawn to the ship's presence. For the first time, the alien leaders felt a flicker of something they had not expected: respect. Humanity, a species they had dismissed as insignificant and primitive, had arrived not with bluster or arrogance, but with quiet confidence and a vessel that defied comprehension. The Dauntless was more than a ship, it was a message, a promise, and a challenge. And as the stars continued to watch, the galaxy's most powerful factions began to realize that humanity was not what they had thought. It was something far more. The asteroid field stretched out like a graveyard of ancient celestial bodies, an endless expanse of jagged rocks drifting silently in the void. The largest asteroids were mountainous, their surfaces scarred by millennia of collisions, while smaller fragments floated aimlessly like shards of broken glass. The faint light of the nearby sun cast long, shifting shadows across the field, creating an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. It was a place of quiet chaos, beautiful and deadly. The alien leaders gathered in the observation chamber of the Seal-Starrer Nexus station, their gazes fixed on the asteroid field beyond the dome. The tension in the room was thick, unspoken but undeniable. They had come to witness the capabilities of the Dauntless, a ship that had already shaken their confidence simply by existing. Now, Elias Carter had promised a demonstration, a display of power that would speak louder than any words. Elias stood at the center of the room, calm and composed. His presence was unassuming, yet there was a quiet authority in his posture, a certainty that made even the most skeptical among the alien leaders uneasy. He raised his hand slightly, signaling the start of the demonstration. The Dauntless loomed in the distance, its dark hull blending almost seamlessly with the void. Then, without warning, it disappeared. One moment it was there, a colossal shadow against the stars, and the next, it was gone. The alien leaders leaned forward instinctively, their eyes narrowing in disbelief. Admiral Zerik's clawed hands danced over the controls of his personal detection system, his sharp eyes scanning the monitors. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "No ship can vanish so completely. Not even the Phantom Wraith." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the station's systems. Seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then, as suddenly as it had vanished, the Dauntless reappeared, this time on the far side of the asteroid field, its massive form emerging from the shadows like a predator stalking unseen. "How did it do that?" Warlord Kaelra growled, her voice a mix of awe and irritation. Her crimson eyes locked onto the ship, as if trying to pierce its secrets through sheer force of will. Elias turned to her, his expression calm but unreadable. "The Dauntless moves where it is needed," he said simply. "Seen only when it chooses to be seen." The Dauntless shifted slightly, its angular hull aligning with a cluster of particularly massive asteroids. For a moment, the ship seemed to pause, as if studying its targets. Then, with a sudden burst of light, its weapons fired. The first shot came from its railguns, a streak of blinding energy that tore through the largest asteroid with surgical precision. The rock shattered instantly, fragments scattering in all directions like a burst of fireworks. Before the debris could settle, the Dauntless' plasma lances ignited, their beams slicing through the remaining fragments with eerie accuracy. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, as if the ship itself were alive and thinking. The alien leaders watched in stunned silence. Even strategist Thrax, who prided himself on the precision of his swarm nexus, seemed unsettled by the display. "Such accuracy," he murmured, his mandibles clicking nervously. "No margin for error. No wasted energy." The Dauntless continued its assault, obliterating asteroid after asteroid with effortless efficiency. It was not just a demonstration of firepower, it was a message. This was control. This was mastery. As the last asteroid fragments drifted away, the Dauntless released its drones. Thousands of them poured from its hull like a metallic flood, their sleek forms glinting faintly in the starlight. They moved as one, a synchronized swarm that spread out across the field with terrifying precision. The drones began their display, weaving through the asteroid field in perfect formation. They spiraled around the remaining rocks, their movements fluid and coordinated, like a school of fish in a deadly dance. Then, without warning, they attacked. Lasers and micromissiles erupted from the swarm, targeting the smallest fragments of debris with pinpoint accuracy. Each drone acted independently, yet they moved as a single entity, their coordination flawless. Within moments, the field was clear, the once chaotic expanse now eerily empty. Strategist Threx shifted uncomfortably, his segmented body clicking softly. Even the Nexus, he began, but his voice trailed off. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The Dauntless drones had outperformed his own creation, and he knew it. To demonstrate its defensive capabilities, the Dauntless positioned itself near one of the largest remaining asteroids. The station's operators initiated the simulation, sending the asteroid hurtling toward the ship at incredible speed. The rock spun wildly, its jagged surface promising devastation upon impact. The alien leaders watched with bated breath as the asteroid closed the distance. Then, just before it struck, the Dauntless shields flared to life. A shimmering barrier of energy enveloped the ship, its surface rippling like water under moonlight. The asteroid collided with the shield, but instead of shattering the barrier, it disintegrated. The massive rock crumbled into harmless particles, which drifted away like dust on the wind. General Corvith's metallic form shifted slightly, his glowing eyes narrowing. "A multi-layered defense," he said, his deep voice tinged with reluctant admiration. "Adaptive. Resilient. Impressive." As the demonstration neared its conclusion, Elias turned to High Seer Althera. The luminous alien had been unusually quiet throughout the display, her glowing form dimmer than usual. Her psychic presence, normally so overwhelming, felt muted, almost absent. "High Seer," Elias said, his voice calm but firm. "Have you noticed anything unusual?" Althera's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, her expression one of suspicion. "Unusual," she repeated, her voice soft but sharp. "Explain yourself, human." Elias gestured toward the Dauntless. "Since the moment the demonstration began, the Dauntless has been emitting a dampening field. A subtle frequency designed to neutralize psychic interference." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Your abilities, Seer Althera, have been suppressed." The room fell into stunned silence. Althera's luminous form flickered, her glow dimming further as she processed his words. "You silenced me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Elias met her gaze, his expression unyielding. "Not silenced," he said. "Balanced. The Dauntless is not just a weapon of war, it is a safeguard. Against all threats, physical or otherwise." The alien leaders exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence shattered. The Dauntless had proven itself to be more than a ship. It was a force of nature, a testament to humanity's ingenuity and determination. And as they stared at the dark colossus in the distance, they realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. For the first time in centuries, they felt fear not of conquest, but of the unknown. And in that fear, they understood the true strength of humanity. The private chamber was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. The alien leaders had gathered in a semicircle, their imposing forms casting long shadows against the cold, metallic walls. Each of them radiated a quiet intensity, their expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. At the center of the room stood Elias Carter, calm and composed, his human frame dwarfed by the towering figures around him. Yet, despite his smaller stature, his presence seemed to fill the space, an unyielding force against the storm of doubt and anger swirling around him. Admiral Zirik was the first to speak. His scaled body shimmered faintly under the pale light, his sharp claws gripping the edge of the table as he leaned forward. His voice was low and guttural, carrying the weight of centuries of command. "Why," he demanded, his golden eyes narrowing into slits. Why build such weapons? Ships that can vanish into the void, shields that defy destruction, drones that move with the precision of a hive mind. What is your purpose, human? Do you intend to conquer us? The accusation hung in the air, sharp and cutting. The other leaders turned their gazes to Elias, their expressions unreadable but heavy with expectation. Warlord Kaelra's crimson eyes burned with quiet fury, her claws tapping against the table in a slow, deliberate rhythm. High Seer Althera's luminous form flickered faintly, her psychic presence muted but still palpable. Even General Corvith, whose metallic body was usually emotionless, seemed tense, his glowing eyes fixed on Elias like twin suns. Elias met Zirik's gaze without flinching, his own eyes steady and calm. He allowed the silence to linger for a moment, letting the weight of the Admiral's words settle over the room. Then, with deliberate precision, he spoke. No, Elias said, his voice firm but measured. We do not seek conquest. Humanity has no desire to rule over others, no ambition to dominate the galaxy. We build these weapons for one reason only: to survive. The alien leaders exchanged skeptical glances, their doubt evident. Elias continued, his tone unwavering. Humanity's history is one of struggle. For millennia, we fought against the forces of nature, against each other, against the darkness within ourselves. We faced extinction countless times, and each time, we endured. But we learned something in those battles, something that shaped us. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, meeting each leader's eyes in turn. We learned that strength is the only way to ensure peace. Without strength, there is no security. Without security, there is no future. The Dauntless, and everything it represents, is not a tool of war. It is a shield. A promise to ourselves that we will never again be at the mercy of forces beyond our control. Warlord Kaelra let out a low growl, her claws digging into the table. A shield, she spat, her voice dripping with skepticism. You expect us to believe that? A vessel like the Dauntless could crush entire fleets, raise planets to ash. That is not the work of a species seeking peace. Elias turned to her, his expression softening slightly. You misunderstand, Warlord, he said. Peace is not the absence of power. It is the balance of it. The Dauntless is not here to threaten you. It is here to show you what humanity is capable of and what we are willing to share. The room fell silent again, the alien leaders processing his words. High Seer Althera tilted her glowing head slightly, her luminous eyes narrowing in thought. Share, she said softly, her voice carrying an almost musical quality. You speak of sharing, yet you have shown us only your strength. What is it you truly want, Elias Carter? What lies behind your words? Elias stepped forward, his movements deliberate but unthreatening. An alliance, he said simply. Humanity does not seek isolation. We do not wish to stand alone in this galaxy, constantly looking over our shoulders for the next threat. We believe in cooperation, in unity. Together, we can achieve what none of us could alone. Admiral Zirik's scaled brow furrowed, his claws tapping against the table. An alliance, he repeated, his voice heavy with suspicion. And what would this alliance entail? What would humanity demand of us? Elias met his gaze, his expression unyielding. Mutual protection, he said. We will share our defensive capabilities, our shields, our drones, our technology with those who join us. In return, we ask for cooperation. For trust. For a promise that, when the time comes, we will stand together against whatever threats may arise. Strategist Threx clicked his mandibles nervously, his segmented body shifting slightly. "And if we refuse?" he asked, his voice sharp and cautious. "What happens then, human?" Elias's expression remained calm, but there was a faint edge to his voice as he replied. "If you refuse, nothing changes. Humanity will continue to stand on its own, as we always have. But understand this, the galaxy is vast, and its dangers are many. Alone, we are vulnerable. Together, we are strong." The alien leaders exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence shaken. Warlord Kaelra's crimson eyes burned with defiance, but even she seemed uncertain. High Seer Althera's luminous form flickered faintly, her psychic presence probing the edges of Elias's mind, searching for deception but finding none. Admiral Zirik leaned back in his seat, his sharp gaze fixed on Elias, his thoughts unreadable. Finally, it was General Korvath who broke the silence, his deep, metallic voice resonating through the chamber. "Your words are bold, human," he said. "But boldness alone is not enough. Trust is earned, not given. If you truly seek alliance, you must prove yourself worthy." Elias inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the challenge. "Trust is built through action," he said. "And humanity is prepared to act. The choice is yours, leaders of the galaxy. Stand with us, or stand apart. But know this, the future is coming, and it will not wait for hesitation." The room fell silent once more, the alien leaders lost in thought. The tension lingered, heavy and unspoken, as they weighed the possibilities. The Dauntless loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel against the void, its presence a reminder of humanity's strength and its promise. For the first time, the alien leaders felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger, but intrigue. Humanity had shown them power, yes, but also something more. A vision of unity. A glimpse of what the galaxy could become, if only they dared to trust. And as the stars watched from afar, the seeds of a new era began to take root, fragile and uncertain, but full of potential. The chamber of the Galactic Council was vast and imposing, its domed ceiling stretching high above, etched with the constellations of countless worlds. The air was heavy with anticipation, a palpable tension that seemed to press against the walls. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy filled the room, their diverse forms and colors creating a kaleidoscope of life. Their voices rose and fell in heated debate, echoing across the chamber like the distant rumble of a storm. At the heart of the room stood Elias Carter, a solitary figure amid the chaos. He was calm, his gaze steady as he scanned the assembled leaders. Though he was one of the smallest beings in the room, his presence was undeniable, a quiet strength that seemed to command attention. To some, he was a symbol of hope, a bridge between divided worlds. To others, he was a threat, a reminder of humanity's newfound power. The debate had raged for hours. Delegates from the more cautious factions spoke of fear, their voices sharp with distrust. "Humanity is dangerous," hissed a serpentine diplomat from the Zirik's dominion, her scaled body coiled tightly. "Their weapons are unmatched. Their history is one of war and survival. How can we trust them not to turn their strength against us?" Others, however, spoke in defense of humanity, their tones measured but firm. "They have offered us their hand," said a crystalline envoy from the Lumerian Alliance, their translucent form glowing softly. "They seek unity, not conquest. If we turn them away, we may lose an ally we desperately need." The arguments swirled like a tempest, each voice adding to the rising tension. The council chamber seemed to pulse with the weight of the decision, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Finally, the speaker of the council, a towering figure with a face like flowing liquid silver, raised their hand. The room fell silent, the delegates turning their attention to the center of the chamber. Elias Carter, the speaker intoned, their voice resonating like a deep, melodic chime. You have heard the doubts, the fears. Now, we give you the floor. Speak, and let your words guide this council. Elias stepped forward, his boots echoing softly against the polished floor. He paused for a moment, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze sweeping across the room. The silence was profound, every being in the chamber waiting for him to begin. When he spoke, his voice was steady, clear, and filled with quiet conviction. Members of the Galactic Council, he began, I stand before you not as a conqueror, not as a threat, but as a representative of humanity, a species that has walked the edge of extinction more times than I can count. He paused, letting his words settle, before continuing. Our history is one of struggle. We have fought wars, yes. We have made mistakes. But we have also learned. From every conflict, we have sought understanding. From every loss, we have sought growth. And through it all, we have endured. Not because we are the strongest, or the smartest, but because we are united by one simple truth: survival means nothing without hope. The room was still, the delegates listening intently. Elias's voice softened, taking on a more personal tone. When we looked to the stars, we did not see enemies. We saw possibilities. We saw allies. We saw a future where the divisions of our past could be left behind, where the struggles of one world could be shared by many. That is why we are here today, not to impose our will, but to offer our strength. To stand with you, not above you. His gaze moved to the Xerix diplomat, whose serpentine form had tensed with suspicion. Yes, we are strong, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. But strength does not have to mean domination. It can mean protection. It can mean balance. It can mean peace. He turned to the crystalline envoy, their soft glow reflecting his words. We do not seek to replace your alliances or traditions. We seek only to add to them. To build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. Elias's voice grew stronger, resonating through the chamber. The galaxy is vast, and its dangers are many. We have all seen what happens when we stand divided, when fear and distrust tear us apart. But what if, for once, we chose a different path? What if we chose unity? What if we chose to face the future together? He stepped back, his final words hanging in the air like a quiet plea. Humanity offers you its hand. Not as a master, but as a partner. Not as a threat, but as a friend. The choice is yours. The chamber was silent for a long moment, the weight of Elias's speech settling over the room like a heavy fog. Then, slowly, the speaker of the council raised their hand. The time has come, they said, their voice calm but commanding. Let the vote commence. One by one, the delegates cast their votes, their decisions displayed as glowing symbols on the central pillar of the chamber. The tension was unbearable, the outcome uncertain. Each vote felt like a heartbeat, the pulse of the galaxy itself. Finally, the last symbol appeared, and the speaker turned to address the room. The vote has passed, they announced, their voice ringing with finality. Humanity is hereby accepted as a full member of the Galactic Council. The Galactic Unity Accord is formed. A murmur swept through the chamber, a mix of relief, surprise, and cautious optimism. Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment, a subtle exhale escaping his lips. He had done it. Humanity had done it. The speaker continued, their voice carrying a sense of gravitas. The as dauntless shall serve as a symbol of this new alliance, a reminder of what we can achieve when we stand together. As the delegates began to rise, some exchanging hesitant words of congratulations, others still wary, Elias stepped back into the shadows of the chamber. He knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long, and trust would take time to build. But today, the first step had been taken. Above them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the galaxy itself had taken notice. For the first time in centuries, there was hope not just for humanity, but for all who call the stars their home. The garden dome was a sanctuary of life amidst the cold expanse of the station. Towering trees with silver leaves swayed gently under an artificial breeze, their branches whispering secrets to the stillness. Pools of crystalline water reflected the soft glow of bioluminescent flowers, their pale light painting the scene in hues of blue and gold. The air was warm, fragrant with the scent of alien blooms, and for a moment, the galaxy's conflicts seemed distant, as if this place existed outside of time. Elias stood near the edge of a small pond, his reflection rippling softly on the surface as he gazed into the water. His thoughts were heavy, yet his expression remained calm, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. The weight of humanity's future still lingered on his shoulders, but here, in this quiet garden, there was a rare moment of peace. Behind him, the faint hum of approaching footsteps broke the stillness. He turned to see High Seer Althera gliding toward him, her luminous form glowing faintly in the dim light. Her presence was serene, almost otherworldly, as if she carried with her the wisdom of countless lifetimes. Her translucent robes shimmered like liquid starlight, and her eyes, twin orbs of shifting light, studied Elias with a blend of curiosity and quiet reverence. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, two figures from different worlds, surrounded by the quiet hum of life. Finally, Althera broke the silence, her voice soft and melodic, carrying a weight that seemed to echo through the air. "Your capacity for war is unmatched," she said, her words lingering like a gentle breeze. "We have seen what humanity can create, machines of destruction that could bring entire civilizations to their knees. Yet," she paused, her glowing gaze meeting Elias's. "It is your capacity for peace that truly surprises me." Elias tilted his head slightly, her words sinking deep into his thoughts. His expression softened, and he turned his gaze back to the water, watching as the ripples spread outward, endless and unbroken. "Peace," he said quietly, almost to himself. "It's not something that comes easily to us." He looked up at the garden around them, his eyes tracing the delicate beauty of the alien flora. "We've learned," he continued, his voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity, "that peace is not something that simply exists. It's something you have to fight for. Something you have to protect, even when it feels fragile. Even when it feels impossible." Althera studied him for a long moment, her luminous form flickering faintly, as though she were processing his words in ways beyond comprehension. Then, slowly, she nodded, a faint smile gracing her ethereal features. "Perhaps," she said softly, "it is that very struggle that makes your peace so precious." Elias turned to her, his gaze steady. "It is," he said simply. "Because we know what it costs. And we know what happens when it's lost." The two of them stood in silence once more, the weight of their shared understanding filling the space between them. Above, the glass dome revealed the endless expanse of stars, their light piercing through the darkness. It was a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the fragile hope that had just been born within it. The summit had ended, but its echoes lingered in the hearts of all who had attended. The station's docking bay was alive with activity as fleets from across the galaxy prepared to depart. Ships of every size and design hovered in formation, their sleek forms glinting under the station's lights. Among them, The Dauntless stood proud, its silhouette a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. It no longer stood alone. Elias stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, gazing out at the gathering fleets. The ships of the 5 great alien powers surrounded his vessel, their once imposing forms now symbols of unity rather than division. Each ship bore the markings of its people, vibrant and unique, yet they moved as one, escorts not of suspicion, but of solidarity. As the final preparations were made, Elias allowed himself a moment to reflect. The galaxy had changed in these past few days, though the journey ahead would not be without its challenges. Trust would take time to grow, and old fears would not vanish overnight. But for the first time, there was a glimmer of something new, a shared purpose, a fragile but undeniable hope. The engines of the Dauntless roared to life, their deep hum resonating through the ship. One by one, the alien fleets followed suit, their lights flickering to life like distant stars. Together, they began to move, their formation breaking away from the station and gliding into the vastness of space. As the ships sailed into the infinite black, Elias's voice echoed softly, carried not just through the halls of the Dauntless, but through the hearts of all who had chosen to stand together. Humanity has arrived among the stars, he said, his tone calm but resolute. Not as conquerors. Not as subjects. But as guardians. Together, we are stronger. The ships moved as one, their lights piercing the darkness, a constellation of unity against the void. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of the challenges yet to come but also of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. And as the fleets disappeared into the vast expanse, the light of their engines fading into the distance, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in countless millennia, the stars bore witness to something new, not the rise of a single power, but the birth of a shared destiny. The darkness of space remained, vast and eternal, but within it burned the faint, unyielding light of hope.